Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to today's seminar hosted by the Bioengineering Department and IRC Biosystems and Machine. We're honored today to have Dr. Ammar Alsheghri with us, and he has joined the Mechanical Engineering Department at KFUPM as Assistant Professor in 2023. Before joining KFUPM, he has working as a technology developer at Comet Technologies, Canada. He earned his PhD from McGill University in 2020 in the field of materials engineering. He completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of Computer and Software Engineering at Polytechnique Montreal. Dr. Ammar has authored more than 15 peer-reviewed research articles and 2 US patents. He will talk today about artificial intelligence and digital dentistry. So welcome, Dr. Ammar.
Thank you very much, Hani, and welcome to this seminar. So since the number of audience is really, small, what we can do while I go through the seminar is that we can have some interactive sessions. So you could have that privilege that you can stop me in time so that you can have better kind of understanding what I'm going to talk about. As Tahani mentioned, the topic will be on artificial intelligence and digital dentistry. And digital dentistry, in fact, is, if we want first to look at digital dentistry, is the transformation of dental practice, right? With incorporation of new technologies. Because in dental practice, there's old school, right? So people are using techniques that they have learned 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But as technology is developing, right, the technology is offering new tools that dentists, dental technologists, dental clinic, dental laboratories, even dental colleges could use, in fact, to enhance, right, the dental care in general. And in fact, towards the end of this seminar, I would like you to have kind of an understanding of this dental framework that we developed, right, to generate crowns for patients using artificial intelligence. So this is kind of a framework, right, that uses the technology I'm talking about, being artificial intelligence, right, in a problem in dentistry to design crowns for patients. And instead of having these crowns being designed by dental technologists, AI will do the design. Now, is that possible? What are the limitations of that? What is the benefit of that? How is this done in the first place? But not only that, can this framework be extrapolated to other applications in bioengineering, for example, biomedical engineering, right? The answer is yes. And I will try to, that's why I'll try to give like some kind of explanation of methods and terms that you could use in other kind of research, not specifically to dentists. Okay. So the outline of the talk will be divided into 2 main sectors. The first one is examples of applied machine learning and deep learning in dentistry. Of course, we will see that machine learning and deep learning are subsets of AI. And by giving simpler examples as blocks, I will be able first to broaden the view on different applications, not single application. But at the same time, my aim is to explain some terminology in an applied way. Okay, so that's how I explain certain definitions, certain technologies by showing you application. And then once we have certain terminologies already like absorbed in our minds, I can move to the second part, which is that framework that I showed you before. Right. So again, this is a chart that most of you, in fact, if you looked at any like figures describing AI and its relationship with like machine learning and deep learning, you have seen probably this figure that tries to say that artificial intelligence, right, contains subsets of machine learning, which contain a subset of deep learning, which contains a subset of generative Alaikum salam. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, right, we talk about technology that try to emulate the human behavior, the human intelligence, right? Examples could include robotics, self-driving cars, and machine learning, which is a subset of AI, as you know. Now, an example of the use of machine learning in, for example, in digital dentistry is a predictive model for example, the torque required to place a dental implant. When we talk about machine learning, we talk about the algorithm that could detect patterns in data that could help us build predictive models to take decisions, right? So to describe this kind of predictive model for the torque required to place a dental implant, I will start with just a quick kind of explanation of the model itself that could be used to build a predictive model, which is like simple regression, right? Building on this regression, scientists and engineers build more complex regression models, right? For example, like ridge regression, multilinear regression, support vector regression, random forest, and all the way to the neural networks, right? And what the, just like as a revision, what the linear regression model is trying to do is to predict a model, right, such that I can know the value of an output, right, based on an input. So the input here is X. The input could be, for example, the diameter of the implant, of the dental implant, right? Let's say I know the diameter of the dental implant, and I want to know the torque required to fit the dental implant. And what this model will try to do, as we know, it will try to predict the weights, which are here betas, for example, such that when I provide the diameter, it will give me the torque, right? And when I give it data, it will try to use that data to fit that model, right, to predict the values of betas such that I can reduce the error. If the error is 0, I can, for example, make sure that I can predict the torque. Now, the dental implant problem, of course, placing a dental implant not only depends on the diameter of the implant, right? So X in that equation is not a single variable, it's a vector, right? That could contain, for example, the implant diameter, the implant material, the bone property, for example, the strength of the bone, right? Other mechanical properties of the bone, as well as, for example, the whole diameter that the dentist has to drill, right, to fit the dental implant. This whole diameter could be equal to the diameter of the implant or less, right? Usually they make it even less to enhance the primer stability of the, like, inserting the implant. Now, of course, how can we predict this problem, right? There are different machine learning models. I mentioned some of them, like random forest, like linear regression, not linear, like ridge regression, for example, more like complex models that could, for example, fit a set of data. So all these points are different data. This is about like 120 data points. Using these 120 data points, we were able to fit a regression model, which is typical machine learning example, to predict the actual torque, right, within like, let's say, accuracy or like of 90%, for example. Okay. Now, in this example, I was using machine learning, and as a dentist or as a scientist, I know that the important properties to predict the torque are these properties. I know that ahead of time because I know dentists told me that, so I know these are the properties required to build the model, right? So I'm gonna call these features. We'll call these features the important features or the important properties, right? Now, what if I don't know these features? Let's say I might be solving a different problem, okay, that I need to predict something, but I don't know the important variables that will affect that output. For example, here comes the example of dental arch segmentation, right? And this problem, of course, this is here a typical example of using deep learning, okay? So I'm gonna try to explain deep learning with this example. The problem here is I have a dental arch, a scan coming from intraoral scanner, surface model, okay? That could be described in computer science terminology as a mesh, right? Which is a collection of vertices and edges that build triangles, right? And the goal of this problem is to be able to label every tooth on the arch. As you can see here, I want to label every tooth with a certain label or a certain color, that distinguishes this tooth from the other teeth and from the surrounding gingiva as well. Right? Now, in this problem, what are the inputs? I told you the output should be a label. Okay, it means that every triangle on the mesh should have a distinguished label. Label 1, label 2, label 3, that defines to which class it belongs to, right? So the inputs are what? Are coordinates, for example, point coordinates. From point coordinates, I could build normal vectors, for example. I could find curvatures, but can like classical machine learning algorithms find this, how like segmentation, can it solve this segmentation problem and find the correspondence of these teeth with respect to the different classes? The answer is no, because it's more complex problem, right? So here comes the deep learning, which tries to engineer additional features other than normals, other than coordinates, other than curvature. So it will try to build what we call high dimensional features, right? That could help solve the segmentation problem. Now, what do this high dimensional feature represent? Sometimes we can explain it, sometimes not. But at least it is what the computer needs to, or the algorithm needs to solve the segmentation problem. Right. Now, that was a 3D problem, right? This is a 3D problem. The input here is a surface scan. Now, a simpler problem could be a 2D problem, an X-ray image, right? Of course, this is like an example of like a network that was able to segment teeth, right? Based on like just 2D X-ray images, right? And the author of this work, like she graduated from MIT with a PhD in, I think, in late 20s, and she made a startup to help dentists for better diagnostics, and also she linked that with insurance companies to try to like kind of put limitations on the dental practice. But our problem is more of a 3D, right? I'm going to come to the 3D problem. But how could the deep learning, in fact, reach such a segmentation? Again, by building high dimensional features. So if this is like, say, the dental arch or an image, for example, we try to like design convolution operators that will be passed on different pixels, right? And then by doing convolutions on different parts of the image, I can reach what we call feature maps. Okay, these feature maps are new weights, right? New weights that I will train my network to learn, such that if I am given an input, it could provide a classification or a segmentation. Okay. Now, in our problem, we have points instead of pixels, and people started to work on 3D data using deep learning on 3D data since the last decade, right? And they tried to like design, right, like convolution operators that could transform the input points into features that could at the end provide a segmentation or a classification. This is one of the seminal work that was produced in 2017, very well known, which is called PointNet. Okay, so it tries to build convolution operators on points. Now, if I look at different blocks, so just to give a student some idea of what are these different building blocks, let's take for example the multi-layer perceptor, okay, which is like if you study data science or like basic courses, they will introduce this to you. So this is, what is this? It looks really similar to the linear regression model, for example, but with an input of a vectors, right? So here again, this is my input. You can imagine this is your x, x1, x2, x3, right? You are multiplying this with, for example, like what we call linear transformation matrix, right? Where you transform your input from one domain to the other, right? And then you apply nonlinear transformation to reach an output. Of course, the output will be different than the expected output, meaning that the error will be big at the beginning. But then when you show it a lot of data, it will learn all these weights, right? Which we call the training parameters. Okay. So for example, the segmentation networks for 3D point clouds, for example, and 3D meshes, they contain, how many W's do you think they contain? They contain up to 1 or 2 million W's. Here we see a single block that has how many W's? Like, I don't know, this could be N, could be 100. But actual segmentation network, they could contain up to 2 million W's. That's why we need high computational power, right? And high memory. Right. So next, so I explained about machine learning, deep learning, just by showing certain examples. Now, generative AI comes kind of under deep learning. Okay. Now, it didn't start since ChatGPT. It started, of course, a long time before. And an example of the use of generative AI and digital dentistry could be, for example, the design of teeth or crowns, as I will talk about while we approach the end of the lecture. And also the extraction of margin lines for teeth, which would be important for other diagnostic problems. Now, in generative AI, what we try to do is to use a network. Again, this is one of the seminal networks that was introduced in 2014, right? That will do what? It will, for example, have two different kind of competing blocks, big blocks. The first one we call generator, of course. I'm trying here to explain a concept. Some of you maybe know about it, but others might not. So the generator tries to generate data, even starting with noise. Okay, it will generate data. Discriminator has access to actual data, real data, that I'm trying to imitate. Okay, and if the job of discriminator is to be able to distinguish between the generated data from the generator with the actual real samples that it has. If it's able to distinguish, if it's able to say this is different than the real sample, then I failed in fooling the discriminator. It means that I did not generate actual image. I generated noise, I generated fake image. So I iterate. Generator learns from that experience and try again to come with the new samples, right? After many iterations, it will be able to generate samples that the discriminator will not be able to distinguish, right? If this is a real sample, if this is from this pool or this pool. At this time, I generated real data, new data. Of course, this concept could be used to not only to solve problems like coming up with new designs, but also coming up with new synthetic data, right? Because like these networks, they need a lot of data, and sometimes we don't have data, especially in medical fields, right? I mean, we don't have enough data that will be able to train the net. And we used the same concept to generate dental preparations from personalized global priors of crowns, so that we can provide an idea for the dentist how they could be preparing teeth in a better way. Like to these dental, what we call dental preparations are the preparations that dentists make to prepare the tooth to receive a crown. Okay, of course, dentists, like by experience, they make this. But how about if we can provide a tool that could help the dentist to see the preparation before they actually make it? Okay, so this will provide them an idea of making a better preparation. Okay, so all the different examples I explained so far, or I talked about, they contain a training data set, kind of an AI framework, and also a loss or a cost function, right? That I'm trying to, I'll design according to my application. Now, again, for students, do you think that training dataset is more important than AI framework, or AI framework is more important than training dataset? So which one is more important, right? Of course, training dataset. Very good. So that's the answer I'm looking for. So the training dataset is what we are looking for, because the AI models, they are available for us. Every day we have a new network, and many of them, they have ready implementations that we can really get and work with. But the training dataset is actually the bottleneck in our case. And not only the data, in fact, here, if you are thinking of using AI in any of your research, not only training data is important, the clean data, the annotated data, right? And to have annotated data, which means for example, here, annotated data it means that I need to have, before I train a deep learning model, I need to have examples that already have the training data labeled. So I will show the AI model, right, these annotations, and it will try to imitate the way it's being annotated and annotated new data. Now, to make this annotation, probably it's not complex, right? Like, for example, in our case, we use dental technicians to label it. We even use students, dental students from dental colleges to label it. But sometimes in other problems, right, you might need an expert that is not available, right? And that's why we will talk about techniques of data augmentation. And that's why also like generative AI could be also used to generate new synthetic data. Okay, so the next part of the presentation will be talking about dental AI framework for crown design. Of course, here we will show a framework that will contain segmentation. It will contain also generation. So we'll like be building like a framework of multiple modules that will starting from an input from the user. Of course, this input is coming from an intraoral scanner. The input here has what we call a preparation. It has an what we call like a master arch and an antagonist arch. Of course, given that input, I want to design the crown required for the patient. Now, the network starts with a segmentation, right? Problem. Of course, it will have to start with registration because we found that this is like very important for segmentation. And of course, we're talking about here automated framework. It means that it will be able to do the segmentation by itself. Okay, it will be able to detect the preparation by itself, which is, for example, this one here or this one there. It will provide context. So I do not want to work with all the arch. I might need only to work with a specific portion of the arch to save memory. And it will predict margin line because this will be the boundary of my crown. So my generation will start here. This is very important detection problem or extraction problem because it will not only like affect the shape, but the position also and the alignment. And then I will generate a shell because the crown itself is composed of kind of two shells, right? That they are kind of glued to each other. And inside we have a hollow. It's an empty space, right? It's not completely solid. So the bottom, the crown bottom, what we call crown bottom, in fact, could be just like taken from the geometry of the preparation. It's not a big problem here. But the crown shell, in fact, is the required design. So let's see how this is like done. Of course, the problem of dental crown and market size is well known. Like, for example, in Saudi Arabia, the market, for example, was the revenue in 2023 was approaching $40 to $50 million, and there's a growth rate of 5 to 6%. And the generation of dental crown is problematic. Why? Even for dental technologists that do it manually on dental software. So there are packages like ExoCAD, for example, or Zirconzan. These are most of them are designed by German like companies that sell the yearly license very expensive to dental laboratories. You can imagine the dental industry, like they charge a lot, so their software is also expensive. And dental crown design is a personalized problem. It is different, of course, from patient to the other. Also, like they are specific to the position. So if I'm talking about a molar, okay, molar, which is like the big tooth at the end, top end or lower end, would be different than, for example, an incisor, right, a front tooth and so on. And also it could be specific to dental laboratory. It meaning that like if you are an individual, you want to design a molar for a specific position, if you go to a different laboratory, you might get slightly different crown. So it's not a unique solution, right? And this all adds complexity. Of course, this is like when I talked about ExoCAD, this is like snapshots from the software that the technician used to detect the margin line. The software has some tools that could aid the design using geometrical operations, right? But still, the dental technician needs about an hour to finish the process. The experienced one could take 30 minutes and so on. And we could have some variations as we mentioned. Right. So the first thing we'll start with is the segmentation, right? Segmentation problem, of course, here we're dealing with 3D data. So this 3D data is what we call unstructured data, right? So we will use some of the networks that were recently introduced in the field that could work with unstructured data. This was one of the networks published around 2020 that we started with. So we said, okay, something already exists on segmentation and labeling of teeth. Let us start experimenting with that. So we took the mesh segnet, what's called, and we started applying the mesh segnet on some of our data, of course, after training it on our data. Okay, of course, here we gathered around 200 arches. Okay, that were our initial data set, about 200 dental arches labeled and annotated. But as you can see, dental arches, they don't always come like this. Okay, dental arches could come with variabilities, right? So other examples, for example, could be, let's say, maybe we have, it's not here, but this is what we have like as a full arch. This is what we have as a partial arch. So it could be coming as a partial arch, could be coming as a full arch. They could all different data could come from the dentist, and they could contain like no teeth, for example, or preparations. The preparation is here, sometimes two preparations, sometimes. So it's really complex. Of course, here this network did not perform well in our data. When we trained that on full arches, the accuracy, for example, was about 95%. When the full arch has some variations, even small variations, you see the drop from 95% to about 30%. Okay, and of course, it's trained in our data, right? When the arch is partial, so not complete arch, for example, you can see it's completely confused. Of course, this is a fake number. It's not 60%, but the 60% is coming, guess the gingiva correctly. So that's why it shows 60%, but it cannot detect any tooth, for example. So we started to think about ways that we can enhance the prediction of such network. First thing, we introduced curvature channels in the network. So it did not include features like on curvature. So we noticed that curvature is important. The second thing, we started with designing two separate networks. One for 3 classes only, like preparations, teeth, and gingiva. The other for 17 classes of the teeth and the gingiva. Of course, one model, later on, we used it to help the other model in pre-processing and post-processing. The problem that we spent a lot of time on was registration. If we collect dental arches, right, we open all of them in a software like MeshLab, for example, we can see that they are oriented differently in space, right? This is according to the way the image was taken or the surface model was scanned, right? So we noticed that if we are able to register the dental arches such that all of them are aligned, right, we can achieve very high scores on the segmentation problem. So we started working on the arch registration. Now, with the full arches, the problem was easy because all of them look like each other. When we dealt with partial arches, the problem was very difficult. How you can register an arch, a partial arch, to have the same as the coordinate frame of a full arch. So we started playing with that different like geometrical techniques to enhance the partial arch registration. Of course, one of these techniques was to, for example, get statistical information of the centroids of every tooth among the teeth, so that if I know the label of the tooth, I can know where it's supposed to be. And if I know the two end labels of the dental arch, I can frame it in a way such that it could be, for example, aligned with the full arch position. The other technique we used was data augmentation. As I mentioned, the more data you have, the better. But again, we don't have a representative data set that could represent all these variabilities. So what we did, we, for example, used the procedure of missing tooth augmentation. So we had the full dental arch, we extracted the tooth, we reconstructed the dental arch without the tooth, and we dealt with that as a new case, for example. You can, of course, remove more than one tooth, and so on. So we can generate new data like this. Another technique we used, and this all like techniques, this is different than classical data augmentation. Classical data augmentation, like in imaging or in 3D data, tells you rotate, translate, zoom, and so on, add noise. But here we try to do specific, like field-specific data augmentation. So what we try to do is, for example, this is the full arch. We started slicing the arch in different slices, and we used that as new data as well. okay, and so on. And we then made a segmentation pipeline that at the end was able, with a very good accuracy, to segment any arch we have with a very good accuracy, reaching to more than 90%. Of course, this is example of older network. This is our new implementations and improvement of the network. These are other examples. Of course, all this is outputs from the model. Okay, so the next problem was extracting the context. So using the three class models, we can also identify the preparation and identify the neighboring teeth, cut it automatically from the arch, and prepare the context, which is, for example, this one, that will be given to the deep learning model to generate margin line and to generate the crown. So next, the margin line problem. The margin line problem, again, we dealt with it using two different, methodologies. Here, I will talk about the generative methodology, because this could be solved as a segmentation problem or could be solved as a generation problem. And we tried both, in fact. So if we look at curvatures on the dental preparation, we can see these variable curvatures ranging from low curvature at the red spots to high curvatures at the blue spots. Now, usually, these margin lines should come at high curvature profile, such that you can avoid undercuts. That's the main rule for dentists, to avoid undercuts. So this could be, for example, a good example for dental preparation, that it's looking like a triangle. It should not be having undercuts like that. But sometimes you have flat surfaces. Let's say, for example, let's look at this surface here, or this surface, in fact, here. It's difficult here to see that the margin line. So you cannot only follow curvature, and that's why we need deep learning to engineer more features than us than what we have, so that we can solve the problem in a better way. Now, of course, here this is all what we call pre-processing, and the first problem we started with here was the ground truth. We don't have ground truth. There's no ground truth data for this. So what did we do? We used crowns designed by dentists, already designed the crowns, and from that we extrapolated points that we can use as our ground truth. So we had to make the ground truth data in this case. Okay. Of course, how this is just geometric operations, we can reach edges that represent the shoulders of the crown, and then from that we can find the closest points on the preparations, and then we use that to fit the margin line, and we can use that as the ground truth, right, for our dental preparation. And then we used, of course, we tried different options, but the one that gave us the best result was a transformer-based network. Okay, here, this brings us to the introduction of what a transformer means. And of course, this is coming basically from natural language processing. People started to use these transformers for sentence completion, for different generative tasks. And the way they work, in fact, they use the attention mechanism. It means that they try to learn local features. Okay. So they try to learn locally, but at the same time, they have understanding of far features, of far parts of the image. And that's what they call attention mechanism. They can attend to other places on the, let's say, image or the model or the surface geometry. And that's why they, of course, they can have more feature representation, right? But at the same time, it comes with a cost of increasing these training parameters, right? These W's. Now, for example, a segmentation network based on convolutions could have up to 2 million or a bit more of features, training, not features, training parameters, W's. But transformers could have 12 million, 10 times more. Okay, so they need, of course, computational resources, but for us, they did a much better job in segmentation and in generation. Okay, so this is, for example, one of the this is the network that we implemented, and of course we did not design the transformers. We just used it. It was already published to generate the margin line. We had to generate or to design our loss functions. Of course, we used different loss functions in the field of point cloud. Here it's a point cloud problem, so we dealt with the margin line as a point cloud, not as like a mesh. And of course, we also use the same with some additions network to generate cloud. I will explain in coming slides. Okay, so let's look at generation results. Here we can see the margin lines, right? Some examples of generated margin lines for different positions: 11, 34, 25, 15. So 15, 25 represents upper arch, 34 lower arch. Here we started noticing something about this network. When it is confident, the points are not scattered. They have high density, right? So you can see here the prediction looks very good, but the points are dense. Here in this example, we started noticing that by examining our results, that at places where we don't have good match, the network by nature, okay, it is providing a sparse output. So we thought of using this as as a method to quantify uncertainty in the predictions, right? Because when you make a prediction, you don't have an idea. This is like in deployment, in real deployment. If you are training and testing, you know if you are far or close to the ground truth. But in real deployment, if you have an output, you need a dentist to tell you this is correct or not. But how about if we can find about ways that could also inherently tell us if this output has a high uncertainty or low uncertainty. So we worked on that concept to come up with what we call uncertainty quantification methods. Of course, we try to find outliers using local density calculations as well as principal component analysis. For students, principal component analysis is trying to reduce the number of features such that I can have the maximum variance among a specific feature, right, or specific direction. And we built our confusion matrix for the new. So we came up with a new metric that we used to quantify uncertainty. Of course, we called that confidence metric, and we correlated that with the chamfer distance, which is the well-known metric in the field of point cloud comparison. Okay, and this is some of the results. We can say for different folds, of course, this is cross validation. We can see that we correlate the results of this correlation found that this confidence metric up to 90% could correlate with the chamfer distance. So we can say that we can use that in deployment also to quantify uncertainty of the prediction of the network itself.
For the uncertainty of the doctor who made the...
No, not the doctor, the AI framework. But that's a good point. In fact, we also have methods now to evaluate the the work of the doctor, to evaluate preparations also, and we're working on that as well. And this is of course, results here that shows the distance. Of course, this is in has a unit of, you can think about as having a unit of millimeters. Okay, that shows the distance between actual and predicted margin lines plus our confidence metric. So here we can see the prediction result in terms of chamfer distance is very high, about 680 microns. And of course, this metric did not see this. It did not depend on this to say it's not confident. It has different methods, right, based on outliers quantification, based on principal component analysis that can also detect that it's not confident. Okay, so we'll just now go through the shell generation, which is the last component. So here, the shell generation or the crown surface generation has two major components. The first one is the point cloud generation. Okay, point cloud completion network. We dealt with the problem as a point cloud completion. This is again, that's a topic in AI in the completion domain. So I have a series of point clouds, and I want to train a network to complete that point cloud. Other examples could be airplanes with missing wings, for example, or cars with missing tires. So these are all kind of completion networks that we try to leverage here to solve this problem. And the second module was the point-to-mesh generation network. So once I generate points, now I will build my surface using surface reconstruction algorithm. For example, Poisson surface reconstruction, and there's also other like surface reconstruction like Martian cubes and so on. So these are all computer science methods to reconstruct surface from point clouds. Of course, here the input was the context generated from previous modules, as well as the margin line itself that was also coming from the previous one. This is like our framework for generating the crown. Of course, here we can see like the transformer. It's already like placed in that block. And here we can see the point-to-mesh module. Here, let me just explain a little bit about this module. Here we use a grid. Okay. The grid has points. These points, we can measure distances between a point on the grid and the surface. So imagine that this surface, for example, is aligned inside the grid, right? So we can measure a distance between the point and the surface. Now, let's say the ground truth, on the ground truth, that point lies on the surface. So the distance is 0. In my prediction, the point might be far away from the surface, let's say 1 millimeter. So now that's an error. So with that, I can build a scalar field, right? That I can use, right, in training the point-to-mesh module to generate the correct crown based on a grid. Okay. Of course, the transformer, I only talked about the transformer. Again, it uses like different building blocks to come up with like predicted point clouds. And then we use the Poisson surface reconstruction. It's a differentiable module to come up with the like prediction of the crown. Now, some details about this training. So we used, for example, about 388 cases. So that's our data sets. Of course, we augmented that 10 times. That we trained for 400 epochs. The validation data set had 97 cases. Test set had 71 new cases. Okay. Of course, usually, like the rule of thumb is like 60, 20, 20, right, in classical machine learning. But here, we deviated from that because we wanted really to prove on a lot of test cases that this could work. Plus, the problem of that we are not working with a ready-to-go data set. So as we build models, as we train, as we generate results, we are receiving new data. So we have a team working on generating data, and they, for example, every 2-3 months, they give us a new data. So here you are working, and you are not working with a ready data set. And in fact, there is no like published data set for crown generation at all in the field. Now, examples of generated crowns. So this is like the context, the input. Okay, this is the prediction. This is the ground truth. We can see here like the prediction on different different positions, different type of teeth. We can also see that chamfer distance, overall average chamfer distance on the test set is about 60 micron. So that's how far we are from the actual predictions. And of course, this was of course, segmentation module, like generation module. It was deployed and still being enhanced on a specific website that is accessible for public. So if you have like data, you can access the website, and like, for example, you can upload your dental arch. It will provide a segmentation for you. These are snapshots from the website. You can see once you apply, load, for example, an arch. This is the segmentation of the arch. This is the context. This is like the master arch, antagonist arch. This is like design the crown. So you can, it's interactive. You can rotate it. You can download it also, so on. And so far we did very well on segmenting partial and complete arches. We also were able to generate high quality dental crowns that have good function, they are well fit on the preparation, but we still need to improve our models, specifically for dental crown generation, to add the grooves and the features that could really represent natural teeth. Future work includes the development of evaluation like techniques that could even evaluate the work of the dentist. Here, we're not trying to replace dentist or dental technician at all. Our goal is to assist that, and also to enhance the generalizability of the model. So all our data is coming from Montreal. In fact. So I was working as a postdoc before I joined KFUPM there, and that was my postdoc project. In fact, I was working with that and still working with the team on this. It's a big project, and we would like to see, can we when we, for example, test that on data, let's say from Saudi Arabia or from different parts of the world, would you have any difference in the results, right? So that's a new field that we're trying to think about. Of course, like this is subject to the availability of data, and also looking more into explainability and uncertainty quantification in terms of the crown. So we looked at the margin line, but we would like to look at the crown itself and see if we can quantify uncertainty. We had a few publications, and I would like to, of course, here, like in the publications, you can see other names like students working with us and supervisors. So I acknowledge all these people who work with us on this project. And these are some of the funding agencies, like, for example, INSERT from Canada. We have industrial partners. These are the ones providing data, dental laboratory, and also the universities involved in this work. With this, thank you very much for your attention. And thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ammar. Very interesting, really informative presentation. So let's open the floor for the audience if you have questions.
Doctor,
Yes.
Do you have, or are there a similar method for bone models?
For
Bone models.
bone. What do you want to do with bone? Like
For bone fractures, actually.
you want to detect bone fracture or what?
No, like making plates for bone fractures using a similar method for accuracy.
There's no methods like can do that. Yeah, it's I didn't see any networks that can do that. But can you apply similar concept? Yes. I mean, if I understand well, you would like you have a bone with a certain fracture, and you would like AI to generate a surface for you, or what?
For the plates.
To generate a plate for you to fill the bone.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. You don't need necessarily to use AI. I think in this technique, because I'm not sure how personalized is the problem. If it's just I mean, if you have the outer layout and you are just filling inside, it's a simple problem. But if you're trying to design an outside surface, I think, yeah, maybe this could be used. I mean, similar techniques could be used in that design problem. You're asking about design problem, right? Yeah. So, but I haven't seen work like that used that for designing plates for bone.
I want to ask about the final product. It will be like a printer, 3D printer, or something intraoral.
Design.
Just,
The final product is design. We're not here. It's not manufacturing. We're not dealing with manufacturing or 3D printing.
like
Can you 3D print this? Yes. Do they 3D print it? Yes. But that's not our problem. We're talking here about dealing with data in terms of design.
it will be like a program and design. Then just will
Yeah. Like I showed the screenshots. You know, like where you can have input and output, and it's a design problem. Yeah.
Thank you for the interesting work presentation. I was curious to see if in your model you trained across different age groups of patients' ARTIS data. So does it work across different age groups?
Yes, but not children. We did not consider children. Of course, children. I wouldn't expect children will need crowns at smaller ages. It's mostly. Yeah. Well, we didn't consider children. In fact, it's from adults and above. But yeah, we did not. In fact, we did not do any study so far to see if crowns on male, if we can predict crowns for male better than female. We did not do that, for example, yet. Why? At this stage, it's any data we can have, we include. So we don't distinguish if this is like female, male, 60, 70, what's the difference? we combine all data that we have.
My second question is about the grooves in generation. So your model also generates the surface for the grooves.
Well, we trying to ask the network to do it for us.
Okay.
So the network is supposed to do it for us using the customized loss functions that we will, for example, now we're trying to design loss functions just on the groove side of the tooth. We'll just evaluate that portion and weight, give a higher weight to that portion compared with the whole model, surface model, for example, so that I can have enhanced groove capability, like generation by the network itself.
If in the tests you have new samples, like this completely different person, their groove profile may be different.
Yes, it will be different. Yeah, that's the personalization problem that we facing. Like that, we're still in that phase. Can we achieve better or not? You know, like yeah, because again, as you mentioned, new people will have different groups, and also we're not trying to create the same groups. Even like in dental laboratory, they don't try to. They design the group from the mind of the dentist, so they have template. So dental technician, he has template, and he tries to deform the template to make it something like nice and to add some very variations on the surface to.
We usually do the bite test, right? They make the patient bite and see that there's no.
Yeah, that's after they receive the crown.
Yeah.
That's after, like, I mean, that's so that like also the dentist can do like final touches. So yeah, that's fine after they design the crown.
Okay.
But we're talking before, like you want to have like, for example, well-fitting tooth that is not higher than other teeth, not lower, for example. So you need to have like that planar, for example, like smoothness, right, with the arch itself. And then yes, final touches. Of course, dentists, they do that test to make sure that they can grind, they can like in time during the session.
Thank you. Amazing work.
Thank you.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, Dr.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. One of the problems here when it comes to the crowns, after, of course, here is just maybe a suggestion for future work could be that when it comes to the crown will depends on how strong the people could bite on the crown. It will start actually, depends also on the materials, to degrade the part of the remaining tooth under it over time, of course, over the years. So now I have part of the tooth there, so I'm putting the crown. Over the time, subhanallah, it's never like the natural one. So the part under
the preparation
degrade
and the
over
crown will
time.
stay.
Yeah, so you will start to see some problems with around the crown. So even the gum will start to go down because of this.
Yes.
So now maybe just a suggestion, if it's possible to say, okay, now you need to take maybe some new scans every 2 years or every 3 years. At a certain point, you need to come to change the crown in order to avoid such long-term problems that you may have.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Just, I mean,
that's it's a very nice point.
because from experience with
I agree with you.
different kind of crowns,
Yeah.
from some relatives also, when they get now, like in my age or even older, they have this problem actually specifically from the crowns. The crowns still are there,
But they are not well supported, or this is like, again, it's a very nice like problem that you described, but it's a bit different than the goal for this project. So
no, it's beyond the scope.
Beyond, exactly.
It's for future.
For future, it's very interesting. But is it a design problem or a material problem? That's what we need to also look at. Is it? Can we?
It's connected.
Or connected? Okay, yeah, it could be. Well, it's a good problem. I think we could.
Because it takes a lot of efforts later on. They need to do surgery. They need to.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. First, thank you, Dr. Ammar, for this presentation.
Here in the data, you mentioned you had 388 cases, and after the augmentation, it's like this data set was multiplied by 10.
Yes.
So this was your training data set?
Yes.
This data was now the input for the transformer, if I understood
Yes.
correctly. But I think you mentioned that for the transformer model, you need data up to 12
Yes.
million.
No, not data. Training parameters. Training parameters are different than that.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Of course, we have the more data we can have, the better for the transformer, much better, and that groove problem could be solved with that. But it's not in our. We don't have that. We don't have enough data. Okay, and we're still acquiring new data until today, in fact. The transformer, I talked about training parameters. When I talked about W's in the linear regression model, I showed like y equal W x plus B, for example. That W is a training parameter. It's not a feature. The X is the feature. Y is the output. X is your input or your feature, right? W multiplied by X. W is the thing you want to guess in the linear regression model, or if it's a transformer, you have millions of W's that you need to guess. How? You show the transformer the correct answer. It starts with the transformer starts with an input, predicts an answer, then you show it the correct answer, so tries to see the error and tries to adjust the W's. You start with random W's. You get an answer, it's far from the correct answer. So what do? You adjust, like trial and error. So second epoch or second iteration, it will change the values, but using optimization technique. So it will follow an optimization algorithm, for example, like gradient descent, one of these famous ones. It will do an optimization problem to guess new W's. These W's in terms of transformers, we're talking about more than 10 million. Simple linear regression model, 2 parameters, for example. So that's the difference. It's a very good question. Thank you very much.
Last question. At the end, what is the in the clinic? What's the input in this? What does the doctor have to upload in this software to get the design?
Yeah. So first of all, this tool is not for dentists right now. It's for dental laboratories, dental technicians. Dental technician, they receive the scan of the arches, including the place where you want to design the crown, from the dentist. Now there are an old school that uses the impression, right? So gypsum, and you send physical model to the clinic. But now they are moving towards the intraoral scanning, small scanner that you scan, you send the picture to the lab. Now the lab can 3D print it, in fact, to have a physical model, right? But can also bring that scan inside the computer, like to use a software like ExoCAD to design. So the input, to answer your question, is the scan from the mouth of the patient, scan of the 2 arches where you want to put the crown. That's the input.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ammar.
Thank you very much.
For your attendance. I'll see you in the next seminar. Thank you so much.